So, next phase, and the phase and the part that I enjoy the most, putting the skin on the trailer, shaping panels. I don't know if you can see, but it has already the shape, some of the shape that the birdcage structure is giving it. I've of course given some thought to in what order I will be doing this, what the sequence will be. As always, my own kind of folly, I don't know if I'm doing it in the right or the better way, but I decided that I will start with areas that only have a bend in them. So I have a couple of large such areas on both sides, and I also have some up top. So I've decided to start with the sides. Now I don't know if you can see, but I've tried to draw with a pink pencil here a smaller area. The rest of this panel is only bent one way. This here is a very slight but still a compound shape. I think the correct expression is compound, which is it curves two ways at the same time. So this one, also because it's only a very minor kind of change or transition, I'm going to do in the wheel. I don't remember if I showed you, but I think I did. I will do again my own homemade, very simple English wheel, but it does the job up to a point. So this part will be wheeled. The rest of it will only have one bend. I will of course now cut it down, and so that it fits the door frame and the lower part. Also another decision, which is a pointer that somebody gave me of course on the internet at one time, is that I will not end the panel where there is a rod, because it's harder to give it a kind of an even transition or an even shape. So I will extend where I go from one panel to the next. I will extend the panel a little bit over the rod and try to bend it or shape it as it comes around this rod, so that it follows these rods instead. So that's another decision now that I have it on. What I will do now is I will be drawing on the back side of it to see what parts I will cut away. Another thing that I will draw is I will draw in where I have all the rods, because my plan is to spot weld. And for those of you who don't know what that is, I'm going to drill a lot of small holes in the panel so that I can weld it to the rods from the outside. So that's the plan. Time to start drawing and eventually cutting. So I got some help once again from my daughter Boel, and we did the first little bit of wheeling. And I think you can see from the way the light hits the panel that now it has a compound curve. It didn't take much, 5 minutes. I'll talk a little about English wheel in a second, but this happened pretty fast, and that's all it takes for this panel. So I'm really pleased with that. It's starting to look shapy, compoundy shapy. But I'll show you another thing as well. As soon as I got the panel up, and especially now that we have that little compound curve into it, I realized that putting on sheet metal like this, a panel which is, you know, straight from the steel factory, it mercilessly shows up all the small defects in my structure. So I've changed my mind. I was talking about spot welding. I don't think I'll do that because I have to let the panel rule. and not everywhere. It's not meeting my structure everywhere, because my structure has its defects. And of course you can't force the panel like that, it just goes boink. So the panel will have to rule. I don't think this will be a major problem, but I went away from spot welding and now I'll be welding it just on the inside. I'm going to have to be a little bit careful. This is sheet metal, so that I don't burn through it. And in the places where it doesn't meet perfectly, I'll use some kind of spacer, you know, just a piece of metal, any scrap metal, so that I can weld even though the distance isn't perfect. So that's how I'm going to solve that, and I'm going to let the panel rule. Also, I wanted to show you again my English wheel. Now, if this is something that appeals to you, there are lots of tutorials, a lot of really highly skilled people. One that I like a lot is a man who calls his company or his YouTube channel Pro Shaper. Check him in. And the stuff they got to work with is, of course, something completely different than what I have. Also the Swede, Lassie, who now resides in California and has a lot of tips and tricks and tutorials on YouTube as well. So you can learn a lot from them. But what an English wheel is and what it does, it's, as you can see, there are two wheels. And you have several more of the small ones, and they're different shapes. They're more or less curved. And what you do is you just squeeze the panel in between these wheels. And what happens when you put pressure on it and you squeeze it, it bends two ways at the same time. And somebody realized and discovered this somewhere in the 1800s in England. But it's a really, really nice thing. It's also really good to have, because if you use a hammer or a mallet or with a sandbag or something, and you put a lot of dents into the sheet metal, there's never a problem. You can always just wheel them out. So this is a really nifty piece.